Stop Now, a social experiment enterprise. Stop, listen, share. Everyone can make a difference. We are on a mission. Everyone should do something greater in their lifetime. Change the future. Be a proud member. Join us to support, volunteer, and donate. Stop Now.
Welcome to Stop Now. I'm JK. I'm back again for this week episode. And where do I start? What am I going to do this week? These are all the questions that was bothering me for almost a week, and I would always like to help a friend with their immigration problem, and the Stop Now mission is to do something greater in our lifetime so that we make a difference in everybody's life. We try to change the future. That is what we are trying to do here. And as I was discussing about different immigration related topics in the last couple of weeks, I thought like to engage with some interesting immigration attorneys and ask them some tough questions and see like where do we end up. So this week I was quite fascinated, and we had a very special guest, an immigration attorney, joining us and giving a very long interview and discussion, and he was willing to help us out in every other way to debate and discuss with various other issues in the forthcoming weeks. I was trying to record that conversation, and since this is our call-in show, since we wait for our viewers to call in and talk to us, meanwhile I'll try to play that out, the video that I recorded with the immigration attorney. Hope you all will enjoy this conversation.
My name is John Veely. I am an immigration attorney, and I'm the CEO of OnlineVisas.com, the intelligent immigration platform.
Thank you, John. Thank you for taking the time and speaking with us. The question goes to, since you are in the immigration field, right? So there is
Sure.
a lot of talk going on and different things happening both at the political spectrum. Let's back up a little bit and explore like what made you to get into this field, like, and what do you mean by online visas?
Okay. Well, thank you for asking that. So Online Visas has actually been a dream of ours for more than a couple of decades now. So I actually obtained the URL for Online Visas in 1998. I was an immigration attorney. I was just a new attorney about 5 years. So Online Visas was a website we built for our law firm, Veely Law Firm, so that I could go down and be corporate counsel for a tech company in Dallas, and my brother was able to, run our firm from our location in Norman, Oklahoma. And what we did, which was kind of unique back then, is we put information onto the internet. This at that time in the 1990s, lawyers' websites were either here's who our firm is and here's where we went to school and here's who our clients are, or they're kind of cheesy, like here's pictures of us and stuff like that. What we did was we made a menu of visas. We gave a bunch of information, and the American Bar Association called us innovators at that time. They put us in their white paper. They gave us an award. Now, fast forward to today, what we've built is a attorney designed visa building process that is both the most efficient and the most effective way to get a visa. And what I mean about efficient is we use artificial intelligence to get rid of one of the biggest pains that immigration attorneys and their clients go through, and that's the exchange of all of the minuscule data, right? Middle names and where you live for the last 5 years and things like that. So what we did to reduce that time is we created we have an engine that parses documents. So when you upload documents, it will read the stuff, the information, the data from, say, a passport or a resume or a previously filled form, and it puts it into our data. Now, what we did to make it more effective is, unlike what's kind of out there right now where people fill in these questionnaires, we said the filling in of the questionnaires by themselves is actually dangerous. It's almost malpractice, because there's no difference in that questionnaire to the person that's receiving it between their middle name and, say, what is the job title or duties, right? Which are where the real analysis goes into. So what we've done is we carved out the most important questions, and we call them strategy. And so on our platform, we can go through those strategy questions and determine, what is the best job, or do we need an expert, or are there issues, right? And so if there's issues and those sort of things, we've built a database of knowledge we call Winning Strategies, which is the regulations, policy memos, field manuals, decisions at the agency level, decisions at the appeals level, and decisions at the federal court level. And we make that available to our attorneys at their fingertips. So they can then take that information and they put that into the strategy section. And then they have either the beneficiary or the petitioner can fill in the blanks that's not parsed by the uploading the documents. And then it produces for us a massive brief, and we can produce that brief in a matter of seconds now, and we can be surgical in identifying those issues. So what we do is we effectively answer the RFEs up front through this briefing process, and we make that brief look like a magazine, pictures of the beneficiary to personify them, so that people think that the adjudicators know there's a person behind this. We tell the story about the petitioning company, so they know this is an American company that really needs to hire the best people to be competitive. And then in producing not just the brief and the forms, but all the ancillary documents, we have like 100 different documents that we've made, anywhere from expert letters to employment contracts, business plans, across about almost 40 visas. So that's what Online Visas does. And it makes the most efficient and most effective visa process. And we were able to obtain a 95% approval rating across all visas this year. And that was pretty difficult to do. I think immigration had less than a 60% approval on H-1Bs alone. And I'm not sure what the approval percentage on the O-1s and EB-1s, but it was, we saw those becoming more difficult. We're not saying that we're smarter attorneys, but by changing the process and by educating them, through the briefing process up front, we saw, a distinct difference in the approvability of the cases, at least against other law firms. When we would inherit requests for evidence or cases after they're denied, we see what they do. And it's really, in my opinion, there's not a lot of lawyering going on. It's really a cover letter, especially on the big volume tech H-1Bs. There's just not a lot to help the adjudicator through that. So the adjudicators continue to kick out RFEs and deny cases. So we're trying to make that much more efficient. And because we've made it more efficient, we're actually charging less to companies to do H-1Bs than they would for those that are doing the cover letters. That's sort of our mission and our process.
To put some perspective, right? So what is the connection between non-immigrant visa and, because you have explained, and we will definitely share that your online platform has a volume of information to
Sure.
people understand different types of visas, right? Temporary visas and permanent visas available.
Right.
Why is it important for the US government to create a non-immigrant category? And since we all know that, like as an American, right, we know the whole world is crazy and millions of people want to immigrate to America.
Yeah, they do.
So then why do they need to have this kind of category?
Well, it's a great question, right? And when you dig into the numbers and stats, where I see this debate going on, and I've tried to, we're not just a law firm, and we're not just people that developed a software process, right? We really think about this and like to give some perspective. And I've seen the debates on both sides, right? So there's statistical analysis, and I'll go into that a little bit. And then there's anecdotal situations, what's happened in this situation and for this particular person, and there's arguments on both sides of this. So I'd like to talk about that a little little bit if I can. So statistically, the United States leads the technological industry, right? The tech industry. This is where the best companies are, at least for now. And I think the reason that the best companies are in the United States is a couple of things. It's a little bit of a lightning in the bottle in the Bay Area in particular, because the money there is creative. What I mean by that is that the investors in the Bay Area will take a chance on an idea in a different way than they will anywhere else in the world, including other parts of America, right? I mean, the traditional way to get money is to borrow it from a bank at an interest rate, right? So these VCs in California in particular were able to arm themselves with people that could identify a product or a service that could really revolutionize something. And that's been going on for a couple of decades. I'm not telling you anything new, right? So I think that's why America is home to the tech industry. But even though it's home to the tech industry, we have to import talent to do all the jobs that are required to do here, right? In my opinion, what I've seen is the most educated and mobile workforce in the world are Indian developers, right? And that goes back to about, just prior to 2000 in the state, which is now Telangana, was Andhra Pradesh at the time. The governor there said, look, we've got a lot of people. We're not one of the bigger power centers of India, but why don't we teach our people tech? And they did it around the Y2K issue. So those folks that learned that came to America as students on the F1 visa. That's a non-immigrant visa. And the United States universities rank best in the world. They still do, right? And if you take the top 10 universities under U.S. News and World Report, America has 8 of them. And Oxford and Cambridge, those two great institutions, rank about 6th and 7th. Right. So this is a really great place to get an education in the world. And in particular, you can get an education in the United States and then move into that industry, and in particular, the tech industry. Right. So a lot of Indians started coming under the student visa to the United States, and then they would then migrate to the H-1B. Now, you talked about a non-immigrant visa. What an H-1B visa is for people that have university degrees. Right. And the job has to require that university degree. Now, that used to be a fairly simple visa to get. Under the Obama administration, there was an 88% approval rating for those. Under the Trump administration, it dropped to about 59%. And it became a big debate, right, on the entire business model, and in particular about the staffing.
John, sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Just a quick question on that, right?
Sure.
It's a minuscule population, right? It's a small number, right? 100,000 people. So why does that become a political thing, and why target a particular?
That is a great question, why they targeted it, because I found that to be inconsistent with the message, right? So the message was jobs are leaving America. Let's bring jobs back. And the focus was manufacturing jobs. Well, it's hard for America to compete on manufacturing jobs when there are places in the world like China that pay people $1 a day. With the tech industry, we had the tech industry in America, and we started shutting down these important people coming in, and not a large number if you look at it. And where I was going to take you is statistically what was happening. So even in the pandemic, and this was a big debate that went into litigation around, the H-1B, whether the H-1B should be changed, right? So the Trump administration changed the H-1B regulations a couple of different ways, a couple of different times, and it was killed in the courts. One of their arguments was, the pandemic has hurt the economy and it hurts American jobs to have this. What they discovered in this litigation was the unemployment rate in the tech industry, which is about 70% of the H-1Bs, that the unemployment rate went from 2.5% to 3%, right? So while there were sectors of the economy with a 20% unemployment rate, it wasn't in tech. It wasn't being used under the H-1Bs. And we really needed those positions filled in the United States, because if you didn't fill them in the United States, they would stay someplace else. They'll stay in India, or they may go to some other country. Canada has been taking them with open arms, and we could lose our mantle as the best tech industry. And more importantly than that, it's really interesting to think about it. The jobs, if you lose your tech sector in the US and you have to have your tech sector in India, then you're also probably going to lose the Americans that were overseeing those jobs, right? The really good executive and management level jobs. There's no need to have those on American soil if those jobs are being done in India, right? So there was a really interesting, I thought, nonsensical debate going on, right? Now, what how that debate got fashioned was interesting, and it would go on anecdotal evidence. And so while the statistics were showing you had this really, really low unemployment rate, and in some places a negative unemployment rate in some cities, right? Like they could not get enough people to fill these jobs. There was always some stories, right? So the story would be the guy that worked at the company for 30 years was fired so they could bring in the college graduate, and that guy had to train him, right? We heard that story. That was on 60 Minutes and all these other places, right? So you can find examples of mean things that happen to good people and things like that. But statistically, that wasn't the situation, right? But it became the debate, and it was, in my opinion, an unfortunate one, was it became somewhat race-based, right? People from these other countries, these jobs.
Story has looks like a valid point,
right?
But, as you said, right, people have more labor rights, and it's more of liberty, and that's where the value of American dream comes in, right? So the freedom and all those things. But when you try to tie the visa to employer-based visa, right? Everybody is saying that like it's an employer-controlled visa, employer applies it, and why is that like forcing the employee to hold the status in it? Because they can be fired. You bring in talent from outside and you treat them like, that is where the question comes in from the other side, saying that we are treated like slaves. Modern slavery is still what is people who oppose it, because millions have already gone back. They got fed up with the system. They can't fight it out. So what do you say to those kind of stories?
I think there's still a lot that can be done to make the process better, right? I do. Like, look, I've been dealing in this world for 28 years now, and I've seen a lot of different presidents. And interestingly, I've seen a lot of different presidents on both sides of the political party try to solve it. And what I found really interesting about that is there are political opponents to immigration in both parties, which is what makes it tough. You know, George W. Bush, you know, a Republican, wanted to redo immigration, and he had a pretty good plan, to be honest. He comes from Texas. Jeb Bush, his brother's family, is Hispanic, and he was sensitive to that issue. Ronald Reagan was also very much a pro-immigrant president, so it hasn't always been a scenario of one party is pro-immigration, the other party isn't. There's factors within both, right? So in the Democratic Party, you do have, because it's a coalition, you have kind of the Hispanic caucus, and they want more family-based immigration. Then you have sort of the Indian community, which is tied to the tech community, which is tied to the higher education community, and they want to open, you know, more immigration. They want to take the barriers off, let the government, let the market control, right? I've seen some stats, like if you took the barriers off of immigration, you'd increase our economy by $10 billion. $100 billion over about a 10-year period, right? It would just really boom. But then the other side, like the labor unions, which are in Democratic side, they're like, well, we think that hurts Americans. We think if there's any immigration or anything along those lines, then competitively, that's not as good for our workers, right? So these are the sort of debates that are going on. So it'll be really interesting, because just last week, I don't know if you're familiar with this, that President Biden proposed legislation to Congress. What I mean by that is he can do presidential proclamations like Donald Trump did and like Barack Obama did before, where this is what we're going to do. But it has more weight if Congress passes it as a law. So he suggested a number of things that would maybe rectify some of these issues that you're having. One of the biggest issues that Indian citizens have, or even if you were born in India and you're a citizen of, say, Canada, is there's a thing called priority dates that are attached to when you can apply for your green card based on the number of people that do it from your country, right? And for Indians, the EB2 category has a priority date of 2009. What that means, we're in 2022. They are just working on the 2009 cases now. So it's literally well over a decade to do that. And that doesn't make any sense. And that's how those employees get stuck. Right now, there are some things that'll let them move from company to company, but they have to keep renewing their visas, and it's frustrating to them, and it's frustrating to their employers, right? So that they're talking about removing those those really long wait lines. And the wait lines aren't for everybody. They're just for the really populated countries. So China has long wait lines. Mexico has long wait lines. A couple others, India, as we said, right? So if they could get rid of those wait lines, and they're do it in a couple of ways. One thing is there's a lot of visas that don't get used every year, and what they do is they start again the next year, and they don't recycle those visa types. So they're going to open those visas up, and that will get some more people through. They have some discussion on how they should reallocate those numbers. Now, one of their strategies is if they reallocate the numbers, then everybody will have long waiting lines. So that's not really a solution. So what I think a solution should be is let's look at market. These are arbitrary numbers by a government that just sort of invents them. Like we're only going to have 65,000 people come in. That's not based on anything. It's just a number. It wasn't always 65,000. It was over 100 a while ago, right? So if they would look at things like what do we need to be successful? And what do we need to protect American jobs, right? Those are two, maybe.
Interesting thing you brought up, John. I want to pitch on it, right? So
Sure.
As an attorney, law looks like always a serious thing, right? I want to lighten the moment, and probably my host would have made it like more fun. And you laugh at it. So as you pointed it out, like different presidents, and right now Biden administration is trying to do this president, and being Vice President Kamala Harris from the Indian origin context, it looks like all Indians are going to get free pass or free ticket to citizenship. That's not going to be there, right?
I don't think so. I mean, look, there are policies and there are bureaucrats, right? What they call the deep state, right, is kind of a negative word for people that work in the government that are not appointed by politicians. So in immigration, for example, the president only has power to appoint somebody that's going to head up USCIS or Homeland Security, and then they will appoint people who do policy. What they don't do is change out the people that are actually processing the visas. Now, that policy is important, and it changed significantly under the Trump administration and got harder, right? But the adjudicators are still there, and these adjudicators may be there for 3-4 presidents, right? They're just doing their job. So it's interesting on that note, who's going to make these decisions. And because of that, and I've been doing immigration too long, immigration's not going to get easy. There's too many regulations. There's too many different things. These people are too many.
That is exactly my point was, John.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when we attach, right, law as a business, right? So you have been doing it for a long time. So the more they complicate it, right? Some of them even accusing that like it's the lobbying and even the lawyers, everybody is involved in this network. And it's like, what do you say about that, right? So how do people, like, because if you bring in H-1B non-immigrant visa people and you treat them differently because they don't have equal rights like Americans, right? So how do they report the violations? And in the first place, why should they even report it? So it is like forcing them to encourage the criminal network, right?
It can. So there are some protections there, right? It's not the Wild West. One of the, in immigration, or companies have been investigated significantly more by immigration enforcement agencies under the Trump administration than ever before, right? ICE was really empowered, got a lot of money. A lot of companies had site visits, right? So if the company was not, being truthful about how many employees it had or things like that, people would turn up and investigate them, right? We saw that. We had some companies come to us, with those situations. Some of them were things that were, kind of incorrectly determined by these agencies, and we were able to help them. Others were scenarios where they just weren't being truthful, and they were punished for that.
John, let's be honest on that. So I'm just one guy. How do I find $1 billion companies, right? For Apple or any banks, Wells Fargo, or bigger companies, USA, those clients are doing major violations, right? One person, can he like fight it out? No, he will be thrown out of the country, right? He loses the status, and it will be like subcontracting company who is being blamed. So much is there, right? So
we've seen a number of companies get hit pretty hard, and to be honest, these adjudicators love to take down the big ones. They become stars. And one thing I'll tell you about America is, as it's frustrating it is to move through this mire to get people approved. The U.S. is a country of laws, and it may not be the best country. It may not be perfect, but basing these things off of laws instead of your relationship with somebody, which is I think where we're migrating back to. You can take a company down if they're in violation. There's a couple of mechanisms to do it. One, the Department of Labor is there to protect making sure that people get the prevailing wage, right? So if somebody isn't paying somebody, or benches them and doesn't keep them on salary and does those sort of things, DOL has come in and made some big examples, and it's amazing in our country because of litigation. Look, I'm a lawyer, right? And I've represented people outside of immigration that have had unemployment issues, and we've sued companies and we've won. And it's because those companies were acting inaccurately. And really what even happens is if anybody in the company that's in a position of power does something that violates a law, and then the company is what they call vicariously liable, right? They can be sued. They can be sued for millions of dollars, and there's a lot of those things out there. So it's not impossible to do that by any means. Now, are these companies powerful? Do they have great lawyers? Sure, they do. But I don't think that the violations are rampant. But I do, obviously some bad situations exist. They do. Right. There are bad people everywhere, and people do bad things and stuff like that. But there are processes in our country, and the litigation is really the best way. Litigation does things in our country that countries that don't have litigation can't do to enforce companies to behave. That's one of the better things about America's legal system.
Absolutely. I agree 100%, because it's a long road, and getting justice, you have to fight it out. Understand what happened on Jan 6. We all know that, like with the people trying to take over, and takes its own course, right? So we had this question and debate. I mean, one of the attorney, she backed out actually, but mentioned that like H-1B visa should be terminated. So what is your take on what happens if they completely abolish the H-1B visa, terminated, it cannot be fixed, right? You have to rethink and create something new. And
well, let's back up to indicate what is the H-1B visa, right? I think that helps, right? I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of it because people aren't involved in it enough. You know what I mean? They're kind of fed little bits and pieces of information, and they don't know very much. And somebody tells them this or somebody tells them that. So let's back it up a little bit. So the H-1B visa is the visa for professionals. It's the visa for people who have college graduates, right? In jobs that require that. That is the biggest driver in our economy, right? The college graduate type of job. It's why we go to school. America's universities are dependent on foreign students coming here. They pay the most tuition, right? And if we didn't have foreign students coming here, our higher education program would really, really suffer, to the point universities would close, and it would be a tough thing. So there's some unintended consequences would happen if you just got rid of this visa, right? Now, number two, there's just not that many of them, right? There's 65,000 with an additional 20,000, but they're really, really important to these companies, right? These companies, we're in America, man. We need to be able to bring people from around the world, especially at this high level. So these are what the Trump administration talked about. Let's have merit-based visas. This is the merit-based visa. This isn't, just come on in and work. You have to be doing a job that's professional. The company has to require it, and you have to be paid the prevailing wage, right? So it's designed, right, to not have it undercut other.
Yeah, I understand that, right? So all the checks and balances have been kept there, and it's been highly systematized to have that.
Right.
Even that, right? The question here is we got some of the quite mind-blowing stories, right?
Mhm.
That's why like I'm asking these questions. Like, sorry if I ask you
No,
some
no,
tough questions, right? So this
I
is
like the tough
what
questions.
the
I like I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it from this perspective, and I understand and respect our other perspectives. Right? That I'm glad to do that, and I'm glad to hear the other side of that. And then I'd like the opportunity to discuss how to think about it, and then let people evaluate it on their own. Right? So just
so
what I would go.
one second, like let me ask you this question. So
Sure.
one of the victim, right, he mentioned this story, like
Mhm.
he has been reporting the violations to Department of Labor, to Department of Justice, to Homeland Security, USCIS,
Right.
on his employers violations, threatening him to withdraw the petition and asking money to pay for the visa, and
Mhm.
also to bench them, and during that period to run their payroll, asking money to run the payroll.
Mhm.
All these things he has been reporting it like on numerous employers for more than 4 years, and the DOL has not done anything, and they have been moving the gun like from state to state, and he just lost complete hope. And this is what has been reported. Like, so what do I say to that guy? Like, how do we help them?
So look, that's a all right. So you just gave virtually every type of violation you could have. Right? You didn't just name one. You named like everyone that the worst employer could possibly do. Right? Make a guy pay for his visa. Make a guy pay for his own salary. Those are horrible things, right? I mean, nobody should be treated that way. And what you also said is that he reported it to literally every one of the agencies, and he reported it on multiple employers. Right now, the thing that comes to my mind, because I've represented companies and I've represented individuals in various bodies of law, right? So if somebody came to me and I was in the body of law that I needed to sue another company for doing those sort of things, what I would do is I'd say, okay, I hear what you say, let me see the facts that support that. Who are the witnesses? What are all those things, right? So suing a company is not easy. I've represented a number of individuals in EEO complaints, right, where they may have been sexually harassed, or they may have been treated badly because of their national origin or race, right? I've dealt with those cases. Those aren't easy cases to win if you're in the civil environment. Matter of fact, you have to go to EEO first, and then they give you the right to sue. But there is a process for all of this. So what would the scenario like that is, if those people did that and he has that proof and he can show it to these agencies, I'd be very surprised that they would just ignore him. So there's two things. Did it really happen? Does he really have evidence? Those are the questions. It's the allegations sound bad, and those are the allegations that there are things in the process to stop. Right? They don't. If they hear that there's somebody whose job is, when they wake up and go to the office every day, to investigate these sorts of things, and they're passionate about bringing to justice companies that would do exactly what you just said. So it's not like there's not a process to deal with that, and he's even tried it. So I don't know the facts, but those are the type of things. Those are the type of companies that get punished. And how they get punished, they can get punished for, if it's it happens more than once, right? They can debar them, meaning they can't get another visa. They could fine them serious fines, right? And when companies get in that position, it's not fun for them. I mean, it's not an easy go. They don't just get to say, hey, we're a big company, blah blah blah. I mean, it's tough on them. And like I said, my experience is some of the biggest companies are the ones that those adjudicators go after the hardest, because they can make examples of them. They become famous for it, right? Like, I'm the guy that took down blah blah blah, right? That's their forte. So look, I don't know who this guy is, I don't know what he did, but there's definitely some protections that could be used to stop that. And
Yeah,
I think
you're right. You're right, John. So we are trying to get the story validated, because we need evidence, right? Anybody
yeah,
can make acquisitions and simply throw that, like just like saying Donald Trump was saying election was fraud, rigged, and show the
right,
proof, right?
prove it,
Everyone
right?
will
You gotta,
ask, yeah, bring
yeah.
it. So
Yeah,
that is exactly.
that's what we're good at, right? I mean, we have flaws, but what America's good at is our legal system, and I think nothing played out more accurately than what happened with our election. You can't just say stuff; you have to prove it. right? And that's where we're at. So look, I'm not saying that this doesn't exist. It does, for sure, right? And it's just like in the election, did people try to vote that shouldn't have? Sure, they did. Actually, on both sides, right? There are people that try to game systems. What our world is like when you have a nation of laws is there's a system to prosecute people that break laws, and there's a civil system that if you don't have to wait on a government to prosecute somebody, you can actually take them to court, right? So if it's a breach of contract or if it's some sort of violation of EEO, all those things are available for people to do. But what I think the question on that is the system broken, or did somebody violate a law? And I think that's where immigration is, right? And that's where I like to put it is, there's some things that need to be changed in immigration to be better. It is a very convoluted, it has so many inconsistent things because people just pile new rules in all the time, right? Like somebody says, let's change this. So the visas don't all work the same because somebody tweaks this visa to do that, and it doesn't work for that other visa. For example, an L1 visa holder's spouse can work. So can an E2's, but only an H1B who's filed for a green card that's been approved at the I-140 that hasn't done adjustment, their spouse can work. How does that make sense, right? So it's a funny body of law that changes all the time because it is so political. It's the political football of law, right? I mean, somebody feels this way, they want to change it for political reasons. Somebody feels this way about it. And that's where race and national origin comes in, where I think that's what is negative about it, right? Let's not make laws that are hard on people because of one of these protected reasons. And that's why it is so, I think that's why people get so, kind of heavily debated on it. But what I think you're bringing up is when people do something wrong, right? When a company does something wrong, there needs to be a vehicle for the people that are harmed by that, victims of that, to find redress, right? They should not have to go through what you're saying that person went through, if in fact they went through it.
Yeah, exactly. So we try to get more questions answered by them.
Mm.
And this the other question was like we wanted that story to be brought in here so that we can have a debate. And that person says like, not just me, there are thousands of people trapped in this company, and they have been doing so much illegal things. And what he said, he can show the evidence. The USCIS investigator coming back saying that like it's just a civil thing, like we closed the case, nothing to be proved. And DOL investigator said, no violation, we closed the case. If you want, you can sue them. So
Yeah.
to sue a company, he needs to hire a lawyer. And he said like the lawyers are asking me $10,000, $20,000. If I have that, I will buy the green card. Why would I even report the violation? So it's not for me to investigate the companies. My job is to report. And when I report, they don't take action. What do I do in that? That's what he said. But anyway, getting on to other things,
Yep.
one of the H-1B visa holder, he was kind of creating some other controversy. And he said, like, you bring on any attorney, and we were trying to get hold of some attorney who can come and debate on the show. But many people said like, oh, no, we don't want like to create controversy, because law firms also does the H-1B visa, right? So they said like, it's a bad reputation for us, we don't want to debate. But this guy was saying H-1B visa holders can also do business. They can also do whatever they want. It's a free country. I can do. Is that true? Like
No, they can't. Look, to be honest, look, there are limitations in these things that I wish there weren't. Right? I'm not here to just be a proponent of everything that's immigration. My job is to help people and companies obtain their goal. And that's from, they want to hire somebody, right? I want to hire this guy. He wants to be hired by me. I want him to be able to work for me, or her to be able to work for me. And I want to abide by the laws. That's the majority of my clients, right? I have a 95% approval rating because I take good cases for good people trying to do good things, right? I don't make my business on, let me help somebody create a slave-based society. I wouldn't want to be involved in that, right? And so I guess it exists out there. I haven't seen much of it, but I believe you that there are some people that might take advantage of others if they can, right? Because the people just do that, right? Some do. So, the thing is what I would say is, it's just like anything else. Choose the people you want to be around. There are good companies that will treat their employees well. And the great thing about the H-1B now that happened at the end of the Obama administration, you know how Trump tried to put in a bunch of things at the end of his administration? Well, Obama did that too. That's what presidents do. Okay, so one of the things that the Obama administration was able to get into immigration in the last few days of that administration was this 60-day rule, right? So what that meant is, and there was another rule before that. So if you have an H-1B under the previous rule, you can go to another company and you can start working for that company before your new visa is even approved. That's called portability. The 60-day rule that came out meant that if you were fired, you weren't immediately out of status. So before that rule, that if you were fired, you're out of status, you'd have to go home. There's, even if you got another visa, you would have to go home and come back in. That would be really difficult on people. So they might put up with a bad scenario. So this was to protect people, right? This was to protect the employees under these H-1B companies. So if you're terminated, you had 60 days to file another visa and still stay in status, right? Those are the type of things that I think about what we need to do to protect people. Now, the visas that they have right now is, again, we're weighing two things: the rights of the individual worker, the foreign national, and the American worker, right? So one of the things that's frustrating to the foreign national on an H-1B is they can only work on the H-1B for the company that petitioned for them, right? They don't get to do other stuff. And that's really frustrating, especially for really, really good people that might invent the next Google or the next, Apple or whatever, right? They're smart people. And I've met them. I've met people that have worked for those big companies, and the big companies want to keep them there, right? And then, they can't just
Exactly.
start.
John, you are right on that, right? So if people have the entrepreneurial mindset and they want to have their own startup company, or in free time they want to do something else, or I get this a lot, people saying that but where is it, the question that person puts it, I asked USCIS, I asked DOL, nobody said no, you cannot do business on a H1B. So
Well,
H1B is my visa to an employer, right? Which I am working there. So
yeah.
what is your problem? Me doing business or other things outside of it? There is no law says I should not. That is his argument.
Well, but look, it makes sense, but there is a law that says that you can't, right? I mean, these visas are really specific things. Until you get a green card, the visas are just specific to employers. I don't agree with it philosophically, but that's how it works. We don't have a process other than if you marry an American citizen or a couple of other things that you can just come in and work, right? I mean, it's tied to an employer, and that's to protect the American workers. And it is complicated. So one of the things I do with
so on
folks,
that, hold on that,
yeah,
right? So when you are saying that it's tied to the employer, right? Again,
mm-hmm.
there is a controversy that employee can have multiple H1Bs, right?
That's
so
true.
What is the logic here? It looks like, for me, it looks like a nonsense, right? So you can have multiple and you can jump to any employer at any time, right? One person invests and brings you in, and you literally want to liberate the employee, saying that they can have multiple H1B. How does that even make sense?
Well, they can only have as many H-1Bs as you could, really do, right? So I don't think USCIS would approve a third one, right? I think I've never tried a third one. I've done a second one, which we call concurrent, a few times, right? So there is some possibilities to own your own company under an H-1B as long as you're an employee. If you're an employee, that means that you can be hired or fired. So you can't just be the 100% owner of that. But if you have a board and you have a contract that says that these board members can fire you if for cause or whatever, you can have your own H-1B visa. Another thing we do for folks that are really, really bright is the extraordinary ability visa. And with the extraordinary ability visa, it's called the O1. You could actually have multiple employers under what's called an agent base. Now, the reason there's agent base is a lot of O1s are athletes or entertainers, right? So they have agents. And if they're in the types of sports that are individual sports, then they're going to have, or even some team sports. We have some guys on this in the NBA. You can actually get multiple sources if it's in the same industry, right? So the basketball player can have a shoe contract with Nike, he can have a Gatorade deal and get paid for all of them for doing those things besides just playing basketball for the Phoenix Suns or whatever, right? So what we've done in tech is we've helped some folks that were working in big companies go to the O1, create their own company and then be able to do these multiple different things within the industry that way. And we've helped them take it from that all the way to the green card and then find their way out of that process. But you got to be really good. You got to be, you got to win awards. You got to be extraordinary ability. It's not so easy just to be an employee like that. But if you can get an employer to petition for you to the green card, that's great. The problem with the Indians is that the waiting line is so long. So what we're hoping for them is that when this, if the Biden proposed act becomes law by this Congress, that they're not going to be stuck for a long time. They'll be where everybody else in the world is, which is a couple of years, right? And that's not such a long time in the scheme of things, if they're trying to protect American jobs. And those are the things they're trying to weigh, right? And I'm not saying they've got it right. I just know that there's legitimate competing interests.
Yes, I totally understand that. So how does that, what is your take on, why is it like being referred to Indians, right? How come Indians hijack this H1B? Like, because statistically it says like 70% goes to them, and it is almost like a lottery system, right? And how people even game this system so much.
Well, they got some. I'll tell you,
of 30 years, right?
They don't. Look. USCIS doesn't want them to game the system, and they'll stop them if they do. But that doesn't mean people don't try, right? And they do. And look, they try for, in their mind, legitimate reasons. I really want to stay here. I have my family here. I went to college here. I paid all this tuition. I just want to have a job. And how they game the system is that they apply for multiple H-1Bs through the same registration. If you do more than one, for the same company, they'll throw them both out, right? So there are some, you can get caught on that. And I'm not saying people don't try it. Then there's those who probably get 5 people to try to apply for their H-1B. We don't do that, but they will, and then they're kind of stuck, because that maybe takes away from somebody else. But the reason they're doing it is not that they're bad people. They're doing it because they want to be able to stay here, right? And they're doing everything they can to do that. And it's a violation of a regulation. It's not like they're murdering somebody. There's a difference between natural laws like murder, rape, and regulatory laws like speeding or filing 2 visa applications, when you should only file 1. So they can legitimize it in their mind. They try to do those, but there are protective things for that. At the end of the day, it would be nice, I think, for those individuals to have some more flexibility. Where I think we're going to see the Biden administration go on that is going to be around wages, right? And this will be interesting to see where they go because of the labor unions that are, big backers of Biden, and Biden relied on them. The labor unions want the wages for foreign nationals to be higher, right? They want them to be higher, kind of artificially high, so that people won't hire them and they'll hire somewhere else. I think that's unfair. And that's what the Trump administration tried to do. They tried to jack them, like double them. So somebody getting out of college would have to be paid $100,000 and they've never worked a job before. They're not going to get that job, right? No one's going to pay somebody that much money when they, it was $50,000 the 2 days before, right? So
exactly.
I think you'll see some of that.
So,
right?
some hard question, John, for you, right? So this is where like the person mentions that question here. So this cannot be reformed or fixed at all. The reason is billion-dollar companies like Apple, Google, everybody lobbies the Congress, even not to make you uncomfortable, like law firms and attorneys also lobby to keep this intact in some form or the other, so that they can have the control on the people, the power, and they exploit. So businesses are what? Basically, they want to make money, right? So they will somehow exploit and keep people under control. So this is not going to go there. That's what they are saying. Like it's all part of the system. So they are accusing that like even the lawyers being direct on it.
We're all of us are lawyers, right? Almost all. Donald Trump wasn't, but most senators, most congressmen, all lawyers, right? We're lawyers. We all went to law school. We're the people. We're a nation of laws, right? Laws are what do these things. Lobbyists are lawyers who then go, try to persuade congressmen to, change the laws to be more favorable to their clients. And look. We can talk all day about the difficulties of the American political system. I think we showed recently that it's very flawed. the immigration process has a lot of different moving parts and has people coming from different angles, right? It's trying to protect different competing interests at the same time. And because of that, and because it's so political, it gets tweaked one way for a while and it gets tweaked back another way for another while. It's never been easy though, right? So anybody that thinks that you just snap your fingers and you get an H-1B visa has never tried to get one. It's a tough process. It's an expensive process. It takes too long. That's why we're trying to change it from our software perspective, is at least make when we do it a less painful process. But look, all these issues you're talking about are real. They exist to an extent, right? I don't think they exist to the extent. It's like talking about the election again. I don't think it's so bad that you throw out the whole thing. I think there are examples of it. I think there are anecdotes of it. I also think that we have a big need in this country to import talent so that we can stay atop of these industries. And I think that it, not just the tech industry, I think it for higher education. I think the foreign students that come here is great. And I think what America needs and what we are built on as a nation of immigrants is this is a place that you can come from anywhere and succeed. It's not a guarantee, right? Not everybody that come here is successful, but anyone can be, right?
Exactly.
And
it's a country like where you can gamble. You can gamble.
take a chance. If you have a good idea, you work hard, you have a little bit of money, you do this and that, you can put yourself there, and you can even fail here and try it again and succeed. That's why people want to come here. There's other countries where you can't do that, right? Like you're locked out. So with that, we're trying to protect those who came in before, but you know what? They just came in before. Philosophically, they're no better than the guy coming in next. I mean, they're, unless they're Native Americans, they're an immigrant. And that is a very big very big part of our population. And we're trying to make it work as well as possible. I'm not, I'm no advocate for the immigration system. I just try to work within it. But I am an advocate for the people that want to come here and the companies that want to hire the people to come here, because I understand why on both sides. And I think that, I think I agree with you completely that those that try to beat the system, game the system, take advantage of people shouldn't be able to do that. They should be punished. They should be fined. They should go to jail if it's bad enough, right? And I think the key in any type of law is how do you enforce it and how do you regulate it? And I think we'll always see examples of people that got away with doing it wrong, no matter what the law is. But I think if we keep the debate open on why we should do this and how we should do it, it's a better debate than just the absolutes of don't do it or do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been wonderful. I think you are making the right point. One final before we wrap up, I don't want, you have been such a pleasure guest like for us for taking so long to provide all the valuable information. And what would be your take on who is responsible for these violations? If you have to account one person, right? They are the one who is responsible for this kind of.
I know where you want to go with that. But I don't know if my answer will be exactly what you want. But I appreciate the venue. I think there are probably problems on every different side of this, right? I think there are employers that are mean-spirited people that like to take advantage of their employees and increase profitability, and they're just not good employers, right? I try to be a good employer. I try to pay my people the most I can. I try to take care of them and stuff like that. I think it's good for your company if people are motivated to succeed, and I don't think it works really well if they're they have to do a job out of fear or desperation, right? So there are bad employers out there that.
On that note, right, John?
Yeah.
So for example, you are helping the employers to sponsor for their employees H-1B, right? And you find out from your employee saying that the employer has violated. Will you defend your employer?
It's an interesting position that an immigration attorney has that no other one has, right? So in every other body of law, you're on one side or the other. An immigration attorney is actually representing both the petitioner and the beneficiary. They're both my clients, right? And so it's an interesting position it puts me in as a conflict of interest. I wouldn't be able to represent the petitioner against the beneficiary any more than I'd be able to represent the beneficiary against the petitioner. What I would do if they told me that is I would empathize with their situation, especially if it appeared to be true. I would probably refer them to an employment-based attorney that would be able to do that. I can't take sides in that situation because I know too much about both sides. That's what the concept of conflict of interest is, right? It's not, it's unfair to the client I have who I know everything about to represent against them. It's not fair. So it's not fair for me to represent the beneficiary against the petitioner. It's also not fair for me to represent the petitioner against the beneficiary, right? So they would just have to find, and the good thing about America is there's a lot of lawyers, so there'll be a type of attorney. It just won't be their immigration attorney, right? I mean, they'll go out and talk to somebody, and I guarantee you those guys make a living doing this. The employers know to abide correctly because they can really be hurt by an employee who files a lawsuit against them, right? For a number of different reasons around employment. And so American employers are, that's why they have in-house attorneys and they have law firms, because they do that. Now, some employers are bad. Some are worse than others. Some just make mistakes, or sometimes they have a bad employee that the upper echelon doesn't know about them, but they had a bully who, bullied their people underneath them. So that, all that can happen. But also you have beneficiaries that will game the system. Right? It happens. I've seen it. They try to do things. There are people that try to make a living suing companies. I mean, we see that from time to time. So it's really hard to say every time it's a company or every time it's an individual. I think there's examples of both of them out there. But I think for the most part, most companies try to do the right thing, and most beneficiaries try to do the right thing and enjoy working their job. And when they don't, they go someplace else. And I think it's the inability to do that is easy as a foreign national under a visa, as an American can, that makes it frustrating to them. And that's why they feel like it's like slavery. But there are more and more things in there that make that easier now than it was in the past. And, that's but it's tough on them on occasions for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's been a wonderful, conversation. I would say, my final question to you, John, would you be like to be on the panel in the debate discussion, because we are trying to arrange? Sure. And then
I enjoy these types of things. I think there's points to be made on both sides, and I think if you're getting information out there for people to make decisions, that's good, right? And I think having all perspectives is there. And if you'd like my perspective on your panel, I'd be glad to give it.
Perfect. So any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think my final thoughts are this, right? I empathize with any employee that's being treated badly by an employer. And they should, if that's happening, try to find a better scenario for them, a better situation. There is some ability to move visas. And if you're really unhappy in your job, find a different job, right? I mean, this isn't slavery. You get to leave, and that's a scenario. Some of it is institutional on how the visas work, but there are good employers out there if you have a bad one, and that's the scenario. For those that think that immigration's just bad, look at it this way: we are the best industry we're the best economy in the world. The reason we're the best economy in the world is this is the best place to do business, and we can't shut the door. We shouldn't be shutting the door. We should not be having 25% less people from India and China wanting to come to our universities. It hurts our universities. Therefore, it hurts Americans. Saying people can't come here and get visas to do jobs is because it means you won't be able to have a good job. It means go learn more skills, right? Go get in a better industry yourself. Don't blame it on somebody else, right? We have to be competitive. We have to strive to be the best. And opening our doors to have the best be able to come here for our companies to do the best they can do is the only way that makes sense. Anything other than that doesn't. And so that doesn't mean that these laws can't be better. They can, and work with your congressman to voice your opinions. And hopefully when they look at this, and they will, they're going to be looking at immigration coming up shortly, and they're going to need to have all the insight. And my suggestion is we're a better country when we're an open country than when we are a closed country. Those are my parting thoughts.
Wonderful. Absolutely. You are right on track. Thank you so much, John.
You're welcome, sir.
You have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Stop Now, a social experiment enterprise. Stop, listen, share. Everyone can make a difference. We are on a mission. Everyone should do something greater in their lifetime. Change the future. Be a proud member. Join us to support, volunteer, and donate. Stop now.